Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our Architect Engineer FAA Air Traffic Control Tower Design Competition. So I'm just going to share our slideshow that we have for you guys today, and then we'll proceed with our presentation. So the presenter today is myself, Thuy Lin Tran Nguyen, the contracting officer, as well as Zane Edwards, the engineering team lead. This is our agenda for today. We'll be going over some administrative notes just to schedule you'll see a video. If you've seen it on the FAA landing page, you'll see it again today, as well as going over the background, the procurement goal, our specification for this project, as well as the strategy and process for the procurement. And lastly, we'll go over questions or suggestions, and then go over the instructions for our one-on-one meeting. So as far as administrative notes, feel free to put your answers, type up your answers in the chat box on YouTube, and then we will get to the answers as much as we can. For any of them that we are unable to do so, we'll respond to them through a Q&R, question and response, that will be posted on faa.gov. And this will be our schedule for today. We'll go through our presentation as well as the questions, and then we'll do a quick break. And then after that, we'll do our one-on-one with each of the vendors that have registered to do so. And here we'll be seeing the video for the competition.
Are you the next IM Pei? Back in 1962, before he skyrocketed to fame, his small firm won a competition to design airport traffic control towers, some of which are still in use today. These towers are now 60 years old, and it's time for a facelift. The FAA is looking for designs that can be repeatable, modifiable, sustainable, economical, and rapidly constructible. We know that as design experts, you can accomplish all that and make them aesthetically pleasing too. We want you to think outside the box, using your innovation and creativity to turn exciting ideas into our new reality. Towers are landmarks, and with the potential for up to 100 towers, your work could be recognizable throughout the country. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Do you want to leave your mark?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Zane Edwards. I'm the DEI team lead, which is the Design Engineering Innovation team lead for terminal facilities. We appreciate you taking the time today to join us. We think this is an exciting opportunity for both industry and the agency. When most people think of the FAA, they understandably think of airplanes and airports, but we are also a large property holding organization. In terminal facilities, and what I mean by terminal facilities is everything 60 miles and in from an airport. So typically airport traffic control towers and in your short-term radar approach control facilities. And we have over 500 of those in our portfolio. Many of these towers are at regional and municipal airports across the country. They are over 40 to 50 years in age and are rapidly approaching, if they haven't already approached, the end of their useful life. As you have probably heard, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act passed the House on Friday night. This bill will provide us the opportunity to address a significant number of these facilities. As an agency, we are pretty good at designing and constructing towers, but our process is not wired to handle this volume in this time frame. This is why we need your help. We want to hear your ideas on innovative design approaches and construction methodologies to meet this unique challenge. Typically, we are a very prescriptive organization. So our plan is to step out of our comfort zone, take the cuffs off, limit the number of unique requirements we provide you guys, and follow the building code to the greatest extent possible. So be creative. As our chief architect always likes to say to me, swing for the fences. No idea is too out there at this point. We know it can be done. We know in the industry you can help us find the best way to get there. This really is a generational opportunity. We are looking for a 50-year lifespan for these buildings. So this is a chance to leave your mark on the aviation industry for decades. Towers are landmarks. They are often the tallest structures in these towns. They can be seen for miles. They're super recognizable. So how cool would it be to point to them and say, I did that? So I promise that concludes my pep rally portion of the presentation. So now we'll get on to the rest of it, to the high level goals of the procurement. So first of these is to meet the operational and cost requirements. Fairly straightforward. We want to maximize energy efficiency and water reduction to the greatest extent possible. We want them to be easily modifiable. And what we sort of mean by that, I want to make sure everybody understands it, is, we spend a lot of money for a room with a view. And every airfield is different, right? So the different runway configurations, different runway layouts, different runway lengths. So towers have to be adjustable height-wise to be able to accommodate controlling the operational movement areas. We also want these to be rapidly constructible. So really, the challenge for you is, and this is probably the biggest challenge in all of the competition, is let's see just how fast your design and your concept can be built. So now we'll get on to the general design requirements. We wanted to give you a basis for your design concept and execution sort of statements. So the first two of these we've already talked about a little bit in the beginning, right? Which is, we wanted the tower to be adjustable between 60 feet and 120 feet in height. We want it to be a cost-efficient construction approach. So those are fairly straightforward. The third, and equally important, is we want to include one elevator, a mechanical floor, an electrical floor, an equipment room, and one dedicated office space in the tower shaft. Something I do want to point out that's very important is the FAA has an exemption from the ABA for the cab and one floor below. So the elevator is not required to service those two floors. We want to support a control cab. To give you an idea of the parameters that will provide you at a later date in one of the later phases, but just to give you an idea of scale, the cab will be somewhere roughly around 440 square feet in area in an octagonal shape. We want to minimize the physical footprint of the facility. And one of the things to be cognizant of when you are creating a tower shaft is that you don't want to create a line of sight blockage from look down from the tower cab. Be well suited for multiple climate environments. So these towers, to be honest, will be built from South Florida all the way to Northern Alaska and everywhere in between. So they need to be able to be adaptable and adjustable for those climates, the different design loadings. We have snow, wind, seismic, and all of those sorts of things that we need to take into consideration. And we want to incorporate sustainability considerations. So the goal, and it is a goal, so we recognize that we're going to meet these to the greatest extent possible. These are mission critical facilities. They're greenhouses in the sky. A lot of these sorts of sustainable requirements are difficult to meet completely, but we're going to do our best to meet them best we can. There are things like energy reduction, water reduction, enhanced indoor air quality. We want to reduce the impacts of materials, so things like recycled content, ozone depleting content, and solid waste management, those types of things. And we also want to consider building resiliency. So we want to reduce our vulnerabilities to maybe flooding, to high wind, to forest fires, whatever that may be. And lastly, since everybody can see these things, we really do want to make them aesthetically pleasing. And so we look forward to your guys' submissions. And Tweety, that's all I got.
All righty. And so now we'll move forward on to the procurement strategy. As you can see, this competition structure is set for full and open competition. So if you're a small business, a large business, a college student, a college professor, if you're interested, welcoming everyone to participate in this competition. The contract type that's structured for this contract will be firm fixed price. And the North American Industry Classification System code for this project, which is also known as the NAICS code, is architectural services. And for those who have not worked with the government before, what the NAICS code is for is to identify the size type of your company and to categorize the type of your company. So for this specific NAICS code, the size standard for this category is $8 million. So if you are a company that has a revenue of $8 million or less will be identified as a small business. Whereas if you're a company that has a revenue of 8 million or higher, is identified as a large business. And lastly, the period of performance for this requirement will be 12 months to complete the design to 50 to 80% completion from the contract award. And we'll move on to the procurement process. In the procurement process, what we release on SAM.gov is the screening information request. And for many of you who have already visited the site, you've noticed that I have released a draft SIR for your review. In this process, it is broken down into 3 phases. So for the first phase, which is called the request for information SIR, here we're requesting offers to submit an innovative design concept and execution approach that facilitates the rapid deployment of the new across the US. And in this phase, we're looking to select up to 15 successful offers to participate and move on to phase 2. Once we move on to phase 2, this is where we will release the request for qualifications, and only those who have been selected will receive the RFQ. The offerer in this phase must submit their financial capabilities and their past performance and their corporate experience of the proposed teaming arrangement. Here, we will be selecting up to 6 successful offers to participate in phase 3. And note, while we say we may select up to 6, there could be a potential that we will select less than 6 or exactly the 6 that will move on to phase 3. And lastly, phase 3, which is the request for offers. The offers in this phase will have to submit a 10% design as well as a conceptual deployment plan for multiple towers. We are looking for a cost proposal that will advance the design to 50 to 80%. Here, we anticipate to award 1 or more successful offers. However, we may decide that we will not award to any offers. Okay, moving on to the evaluation scoring criteria. As we stated earlier, there are 3 phases. In each of the phases, you'll see for phase 1, the highest 15 score will be selected to participate. And from this phase, the scoring will be weighted 70%. And as we move on to phase 2, we will take the scoring from, we'll be selecting the individuals that receive the highest score in phase 2, and they will receive a weight of 30. And then we'll take phase 1 and phase 2 and combine the highest 6 scores to select these participants to move on to phase 3. Lastly, in phase 3, we will select the highest score in phase 3 to determine for an award, if we do decide to award. And the last process would be the contract award. As I stated earlier, we'll decide 1 or more offers may be selected for award or no one will be selected for an award. Here, the FAA intends to execute a purchase order for $100,000 with each of the unsuccessful pre-qualified offers that are selected to participate in phase 3 of the solicitation process that submits a complete design package proposal per the solicitation requirements, but ultimately are not awarded the resultant contract. The purchase order will be executed at the completion of phase 2. So this here is an incentive for our offers who make it all the way to phase 3. If you did not get selected, you will be able to receive a purchase order of $100,000. And lastly, in order to receive an award, offers must be registered for SAM.gov. So I want to stress this as much as possible. SAM.gov is free. You do not have to pay anyone to register for SAM.gov. You can do it yourself. There are several links out there that can help walk you through on how to register for SAM.gov. And I've also included that link in the helpful links last slide. So That's a YouTube that will walk you through, that was provided by Small Business Administration. They will walk you through step-by-step on how to register for SAM.gov. And once you go in there, there will be a list of things that you will need to have. Please ensure that you follow the instruction and provide the information timely, because it normally takes 7 to 14 business days to get registered for SAM.gov. However, that is dependent upon if you are timely in your response. And lastly, your point of contact for this project is myself. So if you have any questions, please submit the questions either to my email address or our FAA mailbox that we have, which is TowerDesign@faa.gov. At any point, any conversations that you have pertaining to this requirement, it has to come through the contracting officer and no one else. So lastly, we'll go into the questions and suggestions, but before we move on to that, I do want to go over the requirements for the one-on-one for those that will be attending today. Everyone who has received the one-on-one discussions slots, please be prompt. I ask that you do come into the meeting at least 2 minutes prior to. You will be placed in the waiting room and you will remain there until you are given access into the main room. So please stay in there until I give you access. And each of the discussion will last for 10 minutes. Exactly 10 minutes, because we have a long list of attendees today. So at 10 minutes, you will ask to leave the discussion, and then we will move on to the next team. For any questions that we are unable to respond to, we will respond to those questions on SAM.gov, and anything that we do respond to in the meeting will also be posted on SAM.gov as well. And that concludes our presentation, and we'll go over the Q&As that we've received. Zane, do you, so for the first one, I'll do the classroom real quick. So for the first one, I've received a question regarding, is the SAM registration required by phase 1, November 16, 2021? I'm not sure where that date came from, but that is not the solicitation, that's not the proposal due date. But the rest of the question is, or phase 2, January 2022, having some issues with updating. So to answer that question, I recommend that you register for SAM immediately, as it can be timely in order to get registered into SAM. But we do ask that you are fully registered by phase 3. And at that time, that's when we are nearing the award, and we will need to be able to identify that you have been registered for SAM. And if you have registered in phase 1 but have not fully completed your registration, you can provide documentation showing that you have initiated your registration. But within the time frame from now until the first phase, you should have plenty of time to register and be fully registered for SAM.gov. Let's see. And I believe that is the only question that I have. If I have another one, I'll bring it up. You can take it on, Zane.
Thank you, Tweet. So I will go over the questions we received from a technical sort of nature. And thank you guys for submitting these. We appreciate it. It helps us realize sometimes what we're missing. So the first one is, what codes does the FAA follow for ATC design and construction? So we follow the ICC family of codes, IBC, NEC. We use NFPA 101 for egress. The second code will be, will the FAA accept performance-based designs as code compliant? And the short answer is yes, we will. We definitely will. Third question, what is the expected staffing level for occupant load considerations? So for these buildings, they will be less than 25, so it's 24 people or less will be the occupant load. Let's see. The next question is, can you discuss the easily modifiable requirement? We sort of touched a bit on that earlier in the presentation, but yeah, so it's not the tower doesn't need to be adjustable per site, right? It doesn't need to move from 100 feet to 120 feet for a particular location. It just needs to be adaptable to where it can be designed at different height levels to meet the different visibility requirements at the various airports. And so we are going a height between 60 and 119 feet. Next question is, do ATCTs need to comply with the guiding principles for sustainable federal buildings? So the answer to that, again, we touched briefly on it in the presentation, is no. I mean, our goal is to follow the high performance sustainable federal building guidelines to the greatest extent possible. Recognize we can't meet all those goals, but we're going to do our best. Next question is there a preference on shaft shape? And at this time, no, there is no preference. But again, be cognizant of any sort of look down obstructions in your shaft design. Next question would be, is there a list of potential sites? So we currently are working on a list of potential sites, but it's going to require additional analysis to be done before we actually release that list. So that list is not available for release yet. The next question would be, you mentioned limiting the unique requirements. What will be an example of a unique requirement? That's a good question. So a couple of things come to mind off the top of my head. So you have the cab glass specifications. We build these rooms for review, and we're very particular about our glass. And another one that you probably will see is the fire life safety bus configuration. We have a very specific way in how we meet the code requirements for the fire life safety bus. Are there any firm design requirements? So there will be some firm design requirements provided in the later phases. One of those would be obviously the cab size and the cab shape. We will provide that to you. Okay, next question. If the FAA is on the verge of approving remote tower technology, why won't the design competition specs allow use of this technology to reduce cost? That's a fair question as well. So it's important to remember that remote towers are not yet type certified. The most mature installation we have is in Leesburg, Virginia. It's still in an extended monitoring phase. And it's also important to remember Leesburg is a very simple airport. It's a single runway, 5,500 square feet, 5,500 feet long. And the technology has not yet been tested on more complex airfields like a lot of these airports would be. So it's uncertain if it'll meet the operational need. And the agency recognizes we are years out from meeting that. Okay, next question is, what is the average maximum daily power usage in some of the pre-existing towers? So that information is currently unknown to us, right? We can certainly look up the power usage of any individual tower and provide that, but the reality is it's very geographic specific. You know, a 100-foot tower is going to use more power than a 50-foot tower, especially in Miami, let's say, versus North Carolina or some places like that. So they're very individual. Next question would be, would you prefer that all parts of the tower are wheelchair accessible? So sort of like we touched on before, we do have an exemption from the ABA requirements for accessibility for the cab and one floor below the cab. So those two floors do not need to meet the accessibility requirements with the elevator access. The next question, the physical requirements stated that the tower should have a cab floor between 60 and 119 feet above ground. Can you please clarify whether this means that the cab floor should be height adjustable? So we sort of discuss that again. So no, it's not an adjustable cab. I can understand that confusion. So we apologize for not being more clear. No, every tower has a fixed height cab, so isn't going to move. It's just going to, but the design itself will need to be adjustable from 60 to 119 feet for the various locations. Is it preferable or required to include stairs in the case of elevator power failure? Yes, the design should include both stairs and an elevator. The design must follow consensus code requirements for air traffic control towers. See, the next question is, what is the approximate budget for each tower? So the per cost tower estimate will be affected by the tower design. And that is one part of the proposal submitted in phase 3 will be a cost estimate. So there really is no budget at this point that we're releasing. But I can say from a overall program level, the bill that was passed Friday is providing us in excess of $1 billion for new control towers. Next question would be, what are some elements of the current towers that the FAA has identified as areas of improvement? So the current building inventory contains a number of different variations of tower designs constructed literally over the last 70 years. So we don't have this information on each design type, especially the old design types that we'll be replacing in this procurement. So what are some elements of the current ATCTs that the FAA has identified as areas of strength relative to prior designs? So many of the recently built towers are much taller than the type of towers being considered during this competition. So therefore that would be, it's a difficult question to answer at this point because they really are going to be vastly different. And so one of the things that has changed over the last 40 to 50 years is our operational and visibility requirements. So new towers are considerably taller than the older towers that we're replacing. So the next question, will the selected design be available to sponsor-owned as well as FAA-owned contract towers? If so, will the design template be available free of charge from the FAA to the airport sponsor? It's a little premature for me to be able to answer that question at this point. I apologize. One thing I can say to that is even if we do provide the design to the airport sponsor, they still will be required to fund the site-specific design of it, right? So the modification of it. The next question would be, how much of the total construction cost is the FAA willing to allow for exterior aesthetics? That's also a good question. Again, we don't really have a parameter or a metric we're looking at this point, but we will think about that and possibly provide one for later phases. Are training and conference rooms to be included in the basic design requirements? So not in the actual tower itself. So the training rooms and the conference rooms would be an associated base building design. So is it your intent to design a functional shaft with no base building? No. So we're not going to do a functional design with this procurement, and a base building will be provided adjacent to the tower. And let's see.
I have a few things if you want me to. Yeah,
please go ahead, Tui. I appreciate that.
Okay, sure. So there was 2 that I've received so far, and one of the questions was, will there be interviews? So currently that's still premature for us to determine if there will be interviews or not. If there will be, it will be determined in our phase 2 or phase 3, but we will provide information further once we do have that information. But right now it's still premature. We're still finalizing our phase 2 and phase 3. The next question I have is, can government employees from an agency other than the FAA participate? So in accordance with the AMS guidance, we must not willingly and knowingly award contracts to federal employees. So to just answer that question, the answer is no. So if you're a government employee and you would like to participate in this contract, whether you work for the FAA or for another agency, according to our guidance, you will not be able to participate. Zane, are there any other questions that you have that are technical wise? Or is that all?
Hi, the only other one that I think we've gotten, let me hold up here to make sure I read it correctly. Sorry. I need new glasses apparently. Okay, there it is. Hold on, I'm having a hard time getting stopped. Now, the question is, I have not seen any information related to egress stay requirements from the cab. Can I assume that it'll be compliant to IBC 2018 code? And so the answer to that would be, we follow NFPA 101 for egress.
Okay, so I have another question. Will participation in the solicitation and or design competition preclude firms from pursuing the construction portion of the projects? That is correct. Any A&E firms or any participant that is awarded this contract will not be able to participate in the construction portion of the contract. Since this is not a design build, you will not be able to participate in the construction if you are awarded the design contract. All right. Anything else for you, Zane? I don't think we have any other questions aside.
I don't see any, Twee.
All right, well, I think that concludes our presentation. Thank you everyone for attending today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. You will be seeing the finalized SIR posted within a week or two from this date. So please check the faa.gov posting for the finalized SIR. Review all of the SIR in its entirety. It's very common for me to receive questions from offerers that answers are already in the SIR, and it's mostly because the offers are not reviewing the SIRs in its entirety. Your one focus should always be the entire SIR, but high emphasis on the LM as well as the attachments that come along with it. You'll find all the information that you need in there, but at any point that you may need some clarifications, please feel free to reach out to me. We require that all questions are submitted by email, so it needs to be documented and written and submitted to myself. So that's pretty much it. Feel free to contact me if you need to, and we look forward to talking to all of our one-on-one companies that we have with later on. Have a wonderful day.
Yes, thank you guys. We really appreciate your participation.